All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everyone today to today's session. We'll be talking about all the different prior releases and some of the incredible features that are included in them. So we want to talk about basically we're going all the way back to kind of like 7.2, basically 7.1 essentially. We'll be talking about all the features that are included in those prior versions. So if you're up on 7.6, and you'll have um, plenty of stuff to explore here after today's session. If you're not on 7.6, then you should definitely think about doing it because you'll be missing out on some of the features, maybe not all of them. So data and master import, view menu, different ways to import data into your product. The view menu is a way to look at all your menus. Seems like, hold on one second here. All right. Had to make a setting there. So different features, right? All of the prior versions, data and master data import, the view menus, something new. I'll take a look at, we'll look at that together. User controlled attributes. I'll explain what those are in a demo, and then we'll look at the connectors, Excel and Power BI, how to use those two tools to connect to Stratum. And then we'll take a quick look at dashboards and the charting widgets that were included in a recent release. The Stratum Glossary is a great way to document your application so that users can look up explanations of what different dimensions are and what the different measures mean. And then there's also on top of data import, there were some enhancements that we just made just recently in 7.6. So that's what we'll be talking about today. If we take a look at our release document, if you have a what's new document, you'll have on the last page a release page that will go through all the different features. So, and we can see that it highlights all the way back to 7.1. So you can get this on customernet.sylvan.com. You can download this and any other prior release what's new documents, and then you can kind of read through some of these options as we go through them today. So let's take a look at the new features in the product. Here we are. We've got I've got the latest release version 7.6 loaded, and if we take a look at a couple of the new features would be the ability to import data into Stratum. So with the new release, up here in the right menu, we call that a hamburger menu. You can click on that, and you can, if you go into analyst tools, you'll see different options for importing data. Now, this does require an additional license, so if this is something that you can't get access to, certainly you can discuss it with me and we can talk about how to get you licensed for it. But this will allow you to import data such as plan, like a budget or a forecast or anything else that you might deem necessary to get imported into your Stratum environment. So if you notice, we got a data import feature there. We also have a master data import. So it depends on what you want to import. If you want your plan or your budget, that would be a data import. But if you want to import like um, a an attribute, like for instance, for product, you might have an attribute that identifies something about that product, right? Maybe a size or some classification of that product. That would be a master data import because that would be an attribute as opposed to actual data like a sales plan or a forecast. So let's take a look at these, kind of dive into what they do and how to operate these. This is one of the newer feature or I should say this is one of the older features. This was actually introduced back in 7.1, and we enhanced it in 7.6 to include options to not only import from Excel, but you can import from data text files, and you could also import from cloud sources as well. So we made that enhancement in 7.6. Let's start pretty simple. We'll look at data import. We'll see, go out there and see if we can import a plan or a budget and how we would go about doing that. So if we go into data import, we can see the menu of prior jobs that we've done. And then if we want to kick off a new job, we just click on new and then we browse to the file that we want to import. Now, again, with the new features within the latest release, I can either use an Excel file. I can also use a text file as well. So it just depends on what you feel comfortable with, where that data resides. It's up to you at that point. If I select the file and click on open, it will then go ahead and open the file for me. There's some configuration to be done first before it opens the file and allows you to do the necessary mappings. You need to tell it where to put that data, what kind of file it looks like. Is it a time series file or a transaction file? And that's basically, it depends on how the format of the file looks. And we could take a look. You'll see that when I import it, actually. And how many rows and headers do we have in that file? So let's go ahead and take a look at that file so that we answer these properly. If I go ahead and open that sales plan example file, we can see that it's connecting. It's actually connecting to Stratum because that's where I actually got the data. And it's connecting actually to refresh the data as needed. But as you can, if you notice, the file has essentially one header on it, and it's got also the well, basically just one header, and that's it. So basically, it's a flat-looking file. Notice how the measures are going across in a horizontal fashion, so that and that's what we call a time series file, with the buckets going across horizontally. So I can actually get this data and import it into my Stratum environment. And that's what that will look like. The text file, again, look very similar in terms of, the data, it's in columns and whatnot, but obviously it's a text file. This file actually is quite different in the sense that the dates are on each record, and that's what we would call a transaction file. So whether the dates are going across horizontally or maybe the dates are going down vertically and are part of each of the record, we accept both. So it's just up to you in terms of what you want to do there. Time series versus transaction. What does the date look like in terms of the dates in that header column? And we can go ahead and import that data in. So it imports the data in. Notice that now I've got some mapping to do, given that this might be the first time that I do this. So I need to tell the product what these levels are. What are these columns? Are they dimensions? And if so, what dimensions are they? So you go in and you tell it, well, this is dimension region, and it will remember this, so that you don't have to do this again. But if you go in and you start your mapping process, then you can go ahead and map all these columns to the appropriate levels. You can ignore certain columns like descriptions if you want to. If we go all the way to our measures, for each measure, we see, the date column there, and then we have the data itself, and we need to tell it what measure to put that into. If this is a projected gross sales, then we would tell it that indeed that's a projected gross sales, and so on and so forth, on and on down through the different columns. Another nice thing is I can add a template to this so that, well, you can't do it for a time series file, but for a transaction-based file, you can add a template so you can actually have it remember what your mappings are. It'll remember anyway, but the template really nails it down 100% for you. So there's an option to even make this easier, essentially. And then you go ahead and kick this off. Once you map your columns, then you go ahead and import this, and then it'll actually run immediately. You'll get an email telling you it's finished, and then you can go in and actually run views against that data. If I were to use, for instance, a different type of file instead of that Excel file, if I were to use that text file, it would be a little bit different in terms of what I would do. It already tells me that I have to configure it. So I go ahead and click OK and then tell it indeed that I want to put it back into my budget accounting measure or category. And here we can see that we've got some different questions to answer because of the nature of the file. So here we know that it's a tab limited text file, and any field quote would be in double quotes or single quotes, depending on what you answer here. I click OK, and then it imports the data from that text file. And notice that it knows what the date column is. I just need to tell it what the date column looks like. So I tell it that, and then I do the necessary mappings again here as well. So if I want that to go to region, this needs to go to territory, and so on and so forth. Well, I don't have territory, so I can ignore that. And then my date columns would be in measure. So that would be, again, as part of my projected gross sales. And this one has units on it, so I would just tell that would be my units, right? I don't have units, but you would go ahead and select units for that and kick that off. So two different types of files, Excel. You can also import from this text file, as you can see. You can even import from a SQL Server table. So all of that gets set up. You can import it from the cloud, from Azure. So there's different ways. If you go into system configuration, if I come down to the bottom of this menu, we can see that we can put in some cloud import locations, an Azure blob container, an Azure file share, an Azure SQL database, or a SQL database that you might have on premise. So once you fill some of the stuff in, you can actually enjoy the benefit of importing data from these sources. So again, not only from Excel, but data, text files, local files, or files up on the cloud. You decide, where is that critical data and how can I get to it? Okay. So that's the data import feature. It was a big one. And, that allows the users to really to get data into their environment, into their viewer environment rather easily. And then you can run a view against that data and start analyzing that data. So that's data import. Let's take a look at the view profile menu. If you notice that there's a new search for views up here. So if I want a view that has cost data in it, I can put in the word cost, and it will give me all the views that has the word cost in it. If I don't put anything in there at all, I can just hit return. It'll then return all my views. And this is the new view menu, where it lists out all your views. It gives you what type of view it is, what view group it lives in, who owns the view, um, when was it last updated, or when's the last time, who created it, or when was it created, last used by, all kinds of different options there. So you can sort on these columns as well. So if I want to sort this in maybe descending fashion, then I can see which views are being used. And if I flip that over, I can see which views are not being used. So I've used in my environment that go all the way back to 2017. And they haven't been run since 2017. So these might be good candidates for archival. If I want to highlight these views and archive them, then I can move them to an archive folder. And I can archive them. Notice that move the selected views to an archive view group would be a good way to just hide these so that users can't see them. If they're not being used, you could just move them to a view group and then hide them and then decide internally what you want to do with them, whether you want to delete them or keep them around. Because we all know sometimes users, they'll come back and be like, where's my view that I haven't used in 5 years? That's Murphy's Law for you right there. So yeah, you want to stay away from deleting unless you're absolutely sure, of course. If you do delete a view, there's the only way to really get that view back is to restore a prior version or a prior backup of your database that stuff that stores that view. So you want to make sure that you have backups of all the different Stratum databases so that if you do need to restore them, you can get those restored. All right, another thing we added was dashboarding. So let's take a look at our dashboards. There's different ways that you can dashboard the data within Stratum. As you can see, you can use bar charts, combinational charts. All different types of charting capabilities are available. You can build a map and you can highlight the different states, and it will show you the data points for by state. And again, more bar charts and whatnot. So there's different types of charts that you can pursue within the dashboard. And so this was added in a fairly recent release. And again, up in the hamburger menu, if you go into manage things, you'll see a dashboard option there. So if you go into the dashboard option, then you can see and manage all the different dashboards that you have created. If I want to click on a marketing analysis dashboard, I can see my ROI by promo, and then I can have another view in here or another widget that shows the actual data for by promotion and what my lift is or my incremental sales versus my baseline sales and what the ROI is for those promos. These are fully interactive. So if I want to drill in on a promo and see, what brand I'm running the promo for and how they're performing, then I can go in and drill in on that widget. Same thing for up here. If I want to drill in on the data behind this widget, I can do kind of the same thing where I can see that most of my promotion ROI is coming in for my 4th of July promo that I ran. And I can go in and open the view behind that visual and see, where these promos are running and for what brands or maybe what customers I'm running these promos for. Then I can drag and drop customer over here and see how I'm doing by promo for each one of my customers. What products am I running the promo for? And again, I can then slice and dice this and throw in product to see that there are a few instances here that I'm losing money on promo. So I need to dive in on those for the 4th of July promo and figure out what's going on there for those. Why am I losing money on that promo? But overall, it looks pretty good, right? And that all started with a dashboard that you could build out and push out to your users. Again, this one's it's not fully finished, but that's just an example of what you could do there. Here's a more finished looking dashboard where I've got my this one's more gross margin oriented. And with dashboarding, you want to, have best practices, right? You just don't want to build a dashboard willy-nilly. You want to tell a story and you want to convey a story and you want to show enough data, not too much, but just enough for them to see anything that they want to drill in on or see some scenarios that they might want to do more analysis on, right? Keep it nice and concise and they will use it. I know there's been lots of articles that I've been reading lately about dashboard cemeteries because they're not used. So again, if you adhere to good best practices, they can be used quite nicely. So that's dashboarding. Feel free to contact me if you want to talk a little bit more about that, or if you need some guidance, and I can hopefully steer you in the right direction. Another big addition we made was the glossary. So if I run a view, I can at any moment turn the glossary on, and it's a little toggle button here on the right-hand side, and it will show me all the different informational bubbles or pop-ups that I can drill in on. For instance, actual sales. If I click on that, the glossary will tell me what actual sales is. And we can see here the definition of actual sales amount is the reflection of the value of sales bucketed by invoice date. Typically, this measure includes return information, sales net of returns, right? So that answers some questions, right? Some users might think, is this gross or net sales, right? So, the measure itself doesn't really say that, but the definition, the user can go into the definition and see what it means. What is it? And the more information you have in there, typically the better. I mean, don't write a book, but you certainly want to include enough detailed information so that you answer their questions. Percent, you can do it on your calculations. So any calculation within the view, you can go ahead and define that calculation. And for my measure or my dimensions, I can go in and go into product brand level and have it tell me what the product brand means. What you know, where's it coming from? Maybe you can put the actual file name and the field name from the master file in here if you want. So that way the users know specifically where that data is coming from. If I click in on one of the product brands specifically per se, like Tip Top, I then get all the different attributes for that particular product brand. So I can see the brand manager, the email address, and some contact information about them. The glossary so any view will have glossary components in it, and you can turn them on and off. If I don't want to use the glossary, I can go ahead and turn that off. And then I don't have all the busy little, pop-up bubbles that I can drill in on. Another thing you can do is manage the glossary at a global level. So in my hamburger menu, in the upper right-hand corner, I can go into Stratum Glossary, and now I'm into the actual global level of the glossary. So and it has an index. So if there's something I'm looking for, that's actual sales related, perhaps, then I can go in and look for anything that has actual sales in the definition. If I want to click in on actual sale, like for instance, freight cost, and I can see what the definition is for actual sales freight costs, I can click in on it and I can add to it if I want to, type in more information about it if I need to, up to you. But this is how, and not all users would be able to do this. Only certain users would be able to add information to the glossary, of course. You'll decide who that is. But it tells me, again, what type of measure it is, and then I can go ahead and give it a definition for that particular measure. Right? And so on and so forth. So this is a great way, a global way to manage your application. And here, back up, you even get to describe the actual application itself. So if you want to go in and describe what this thing is, you can write the description here as well. This is the enterprise analytical application for this company, our enterprise. It includes sales information, blah, blah. You can write a nice paragraph here of what this thing is, right? So if you need some tips, contact me. I'm good at this stuff. So anyway, that's your glossary. I really like this because it really gives you a nice, area to define your application. It's metadata on steroids is another way to look at it. So sometimes you can't have enough metadata. So metadata is data about the data. So you have the data itself, of course, in your application, but all these terms that describe these things, that's your metadata, and that's what that means. And it's very, very important that metadata is good and is stored properly and is available. So that this really enhances your metadata capabilities. All right, let's just want to go back. So kind of talked about all of this stuff. We did not talk about the attribute. So you do have the ability to add in an attribute as well. So if I go back into analyst tools and I do a data import, if I do a master data import, I can actually import an attribute. My example here is a a product attribute. So this would be, let's see, it's under the attribute import for products, and it's in an Excel file. So here I've got product, and notice how I've done this before, so it already knows the mapping, so I don't have to do it again. So that's an example of how that works. But here, if I want to import an attribute for products, for instance, I have an Excel file for all unique products that are part of this promo that I want to tag each product with a promo code. And this would be a way to do that so that I know that I'm running a promo for this particular product, and then each product has its own little code. Some of the products have the same code because I'm running the same promo for those products. So this may not exist actually in your ERP systems or any other system. You just might have this in Excel. And this would be yet a way to get this in and have it available at the product level. You can even aggregate on it for that matter. So what does it look like? Well, if we go in and run a view on it, I can actually aggregate on that marketing code now. So now I can see what sales are for these marketing codes and analyze any lift associated to them. I can drill in on them to see what items are affected, and so on and so forth. Right? So being able to aggregate on that attribute is a very cool concept, you know. The attribute's also available at the product level. We know that. So I can add that in as an attribute as well, my product marketing code. And I can add that in as another column of data. So whether you're aggregating on it or just you want it as another attribute column for your products, then you can either way you can bring that data in that I just imported from that Excel file. And now I can import user-defined attributes for product, for customers. You decide, you know, where those are going to